Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe, from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guests, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here in the summer of 2025. As we embark into the summer, we say, what are we going to read? What is the journey we are going to take? What are the adventures we're going to find ourselves enmeshed in? Is it in a book? Is it in reality? Is it in our illusions, our dreams, or perhaps our real life? What is this journey we are seeking? Is it something to take us out of the ordinary? Perhaps it is something that will take us out and say, oh my gosh, I could never do that. Perhaps others that are saying I need to release my secrets, my feelings, or maybe my dreams and my thoughts and see where it takes me. Today my guest is Diane Parrish. Again, the book is Something Better, a novel. This is absolutely a delightful summer read. Definitely is not a one day. For some, it might be 2 or 3. For me, it's just a few hours, but not everybody can read that fast, as we've always said. But it truly is about being able to say, what is the journey I would like to go on? And I would like a co-pilot, someone to come along with me to guide the story, perhaps maybe encourage and inspire me, and then find something that will say, ooh, it triggered me. I'd love to do that. Maybe that's me. Perhaps maybe I should look at how my life is unfolding. Diane, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us here today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
So glad to have you to be able to talk about your book, Something Better, because we always think about this, and I think 99.9% of the people, if you ask the question, is there something better, they will always say no, for fearful of losing something, losing someone, perhaps expelling a secret, or maybe opening themselves up. Don't you think?
I think that's right. I think people are very much afraid to try for something better. And I think one of the things I learned in writing the book is that obtaining something better often requires a great deal of patience. I think in general, Americans, especially in the 21st century, are not a particularly patient people. Mm-hmm. We expect kind of immediate gratification for everything. And one of the things I wanted to highlight in the book was that sometimes the something better is not immediately apparent, and it only becomes apparent when you're willing to wait and have a little patience for it to unfold.
Well, also, too, I think sometimes better, we say, what is the carrot that's being dangled in front of your face, you know? Mm-hmm. Or what is are you going out and having a little tryst? Or perhaps are you being a bit flirtatious? You know, myself, I turned 70 this year. I know many decades of these kind of actions amongst myself and others. You know, we've all done it. We've all been there. Mm-hmm. However, we don't want to be able to say, it was a delightful thread in my life I experienced, and look at where I am today. Perhaps?
I think that's right. I think, that's really a key question, isn't it? How do you define what's better, something better? Mm-hmm. Because something better might not be the same thing as something perfect, and it might not be what initially seems to be better. I mean, the example you gave to me reminds me a little bit of the grass is greener situation where, right. You meet somebody, oh, this person is so interesting. This person shares all my same interests. This person makes me feel like $1 million. This has got to be better than what I have right now. But is it? And how do you decide, is it better for more than about 5 minutes? Or is it something truly better, right?
I mean, I think everybody thinks about their life partners in this aspect. Is this as good as it's going to get, or am I stuck with this? Because I honestly can say, being older, all this from these older generations, they're like, this is what we've got, and we settle in, and we stay, and we survive. But then we learn different characteristics of our human story. In other words, we learn compassion, forgiveness, honesty, truthfulness, pain, suffering. Mm-hmm. We learn those concepts versus always saying, am I satiating my mind to have something easy, delightful, exciting, and joy, all of those other characteristics. So are we running to, what are we running to or from, perhaps?
Well, yep. What are we running to or from? And I think maybe it does take maturity. Maybe it does take a long relationship or just being alive on this planet for a lot of years and seeing a lot of circumstances, as you referenced a few minutes ago, before you realize that those harder things, the forgiveness, the patience, the tolerance, the ability to withstand some life difficulties with another person are really much more substantial and satisfying in the long run than having fun. I mean, hopefully you have fun with the person that you're in it for the long haul with, but having fun that's so fleeting. I read a beautiful piece a couple of days ago. I wish I could think where I read this. It might come to me, but a woman writer had observed a man and woman walking down the street. They were older, not super old, maybe late 60s, early 70s, and she was so bent over she could hardly stand up, and he was accompanying her. And what she noted at the time was he didn't look put out, he didn't look impatient, he wasn't looking around at other people thinking, oh, woe was me, I could be doing that, I could be having that kind of fun. He had accepted in this moment, for this period of time in his life, this is what he's doing. He's helping his wife get from point A to point B. And she found a great peace in his face when he was doing that.
Yes, as I work so much with elders, especially at the last, I would say, 1/3 of their life, the idea is that you're looking for companionship, someone to be there. And I think if we can just break it down, kind of the relationship, we say, what are we truly looking for in someone else? If we're just saying we're looking for someone to walk alongside of me and allows me to be who I am. I could be angry one day, happy the next day, challenging the next, ready to run the next, whatever it might be, but still be that companion that says, I have those same similar feelings. You want to hear my story. So can it be two co-pilots versus this whole overlaying stuff? I can remember decades ago it was, you complete me, you're my puzzle piece, blah, 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 blah. And all of that stuff really got people's heads messed up. And they started to think that that's the way it should be. And then there was even the dogma, and people would say, oh, yeah, I was divorced once, and people said, oh, there must be something wrong with you. And I always say to them, absolutely not. That is the most awesome thing. You just said that was the end of that chapter, and you were ready with a new page to begin again. And it's all about our perspective on the existence, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I myself, I've been married now for 46 years. But I also was divorced, I was very briefly, when I was very young, and that marriage did not last. I think about that early marriage and think about, had I been different and older, had he been different and older, we might have had whatever it took to make it work. But to be perfectly honest with you, I'm glad it didn't. I mean, that sounds like a strange thing to say, but I am very glad it didn't, because for me, something better was many, many things that came after that I am quite convinced would not have happened if we had just gutted it out and stayed in that mismatch of a marriage that we had.
And I always say, you were meant to be there for the period of time for a certain purpose. And whatever the purpose was, we don't have to always analyze it or turn around and say, what went wrong? Or I must have been this bad person or that bad person, or they did this or they did that. And I think once you start going back and digging up and using judgment or even romanticizing the past, you end up in a conundrum that justifies or validates your current state of mind, don't you think?
Yeah, you can definitely do that. And you can overthink. I mean, my husband would say this, right? I'm the queen of overthinking. I overthink everything. But I think that's a trap, as you said. I think it's very easy to both self-justify and self-condemn, but you can get into this spiral where you just round and round and round and round and round, if only, or why did I, or why didn't I, or if I'd done that differently. And at some point, you have to forgive yourself and say, more or less, I did the best I could under those circumstances. Those circumstances are over now. Hopefully, I learned something. I grew. I gained a new perspective. I'm somebody in some ways different now. I move on from here and make my way on a new path in a new way. And I think what a mistake not to be able to give yourself the grace to say, basically, whoops, let's do something else.
Yeah. But you know what also, too, I think, Diane, it's not about being wrong. It's the idea is that it is. That's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
yes.
I think once we start getting the wrongness, when I talk to patients at end of life, they have so many monkeys on their back that some people decide to either carry them with them or others will spew them like hot fire at you. You did this, you did that, blah, 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 blah. But still others will say, I'm going to carry them on my back, and if you have something to say to me, go ahead and say it. And at those end-of-life conversations, I'll say, please don't have them. Please don't do it. Please don't do it.
It's not like in the movies, is it?
Yeah, no. It's like, I really want you to I don't want you to have any of these conversations. I want you to sit there and say, thank you for your existence. I love you. Goodbye. That's it. If we just ever said that to everything in our life, we would have a lot of endings just as end of life does, and we would be able to move on with a clean slate, perhaps?
I think so. I don't know about you, but both my parents died when I was not with them. So there was a time when I felt, I missed something. I missed some opportunity to maybe say something, or they maybe wanted to say something to me. But to the point you made a few minutes ago, maybe that just wasn't what was supposed to happen. I couldn't be there. It was time for them to go, and maybe everything we needed to say to either had been said, maybe something that we thought we needed to say to each other didn't really need to be said. This is a little flaky what I'm about to say, but I do wonder, maybe there's a way to communicate beyond. I'm not talking about seances or anything weird like that, but I'm thinking we feel the presence sometimes of people who've left this earth, and I don't know if it's impossible to communicate that way, but I'd like to think it isn't impossible to communicate that way.
Well, myself, I'm a medium, and a lot of times, when people are asking questions and stuff, we're always talk about that. And I say, they're like, is he okay over there? How is he this? Where is this? How is that? And I said, honey, all of that is a human story. The minute you have vacated this existence and gone through the door, the story no longer exists. So what you're asking me is to create another story for you so you can feel okay.
Yeah.
When in essence, it's truly about your intuition. Can you feel their energy around you? And that would feel warm or kind or gentle, or you'd see a sign or whatever. And you would say, that's awesome. I know they're with me. I know they loved me. I know I love them. Thank you. And that's it. I think we make so much judgment of the story that we really concoct this illusion like TV screens, And just as you shared in your book, Something Better, when your characters, one had moved very far away for a job, there was a sense of something that you couldn't let go. And just as the one that stayed behind, there was a sense of something that you couldn't let it go either. So the idea is that we have this sense within us. We just don't validate it. Perhaps?
I think we tend to want outside validation for those senses until we reach a certain point in our own self-concept and our confidence and our ability to assess the world. We want somebody else to tell us, oh, yes, that's right, or oh, yes, that was good, or yes, that was not good.
Right.
I think it takes a certain, I would say, spiritual maturity maybe to understand we can determine for ourselves what we're missing, what we're lacking, what we need, what's worth holding on to. But it takes a lot of confidence to do that without somebody else cheering you on.
Yeah. And in your story, Something Better, it truly is when one of your characters, they have a very incident within the couple, a very we're not giving the story away, a very life-changing story, event, and one says, I think I'm going to make a change, and they move very far away and leave the other behind. I think the idea is that, do we sometimes tend to walk away emotionally? Do we tend to overprotect our heart and our mind? Or do we tend to find an escape route, within a relationship, a job, or a physical place that you're at, to maybe say, I'm not ready to deal with what's come up for me, but I'm just going to look at the candy apple that's down at the end of the road because, that looks better than dealing with my own emotions or where I am, perhaps?
I do think that quite often happens. It can be overwhelming. I mean, to move away from a relationship rather than face what might be lacking or needing work in a relationship is in some ways the easier thing to do.
Right.
You can leave all the messy problems behind and go to a geographically different place or an emotionally different place, and then you've given yourself some space without dealing with things that maybe you need to deal with, or maybe that emotionally departing or physically departing. Yeah, I think sometimes the desire to do that, the desire to emotionally absent ourselves or physically renew ourselves seems superficially to be, I need to do this thing for work, or I need to do this other thing. But what it's sometimes, not always, but sometimes the decision to do that is actually telling us something else. Maybe it's saying, I'm running away, or maybe it's saying, what's happening here is not what I think is the best thing to happen, but I don't want to get into the middle of untangling all the threads and figuring out how to make it better, so I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to find a new place and start all over again.
Yeah. And I think also, too, when those times when you do leave, just as you share in your character in the book, you always catch yourself saying, well, so-and-so does it this way, or I do it that way, or this is the way it should be. In other words, you carry your past story into your new beginning, and you don't even realize that that's been the template that you've been carrying with you. And now you're expecting everything to be the square peg, round hole, whatever, you know what I mean, idea. And things either fit or they don't fit in. So you're always judging and validating your next experience on the past one, don't you think?
Based on your past, Do you found, how do we avoid doing that? I mean, we make our decisions based on the events and decisions we've made that brought us to this point. I think it's very challenging to be standing at a fresh point perspective. Have you, in your experience, found there's a way to do that more easily?
Yeah, I don't think there is, but I think that what we do eventually say is meet each day with it instead of saying we're going to do it, and every day you defeat the story. So if you get up in the morning and you say, today's a new day, what's presenting, where are we going, what are we going to do? We're going to start fresh, and just did it for that day. because really, I think people get so wrapped up in the idea of lifetimes, this is my life. And I said, no, you only have today. Yes. There isn't all of that other stuff. It's just you keep conglomerating all of these things to create that story. Perhaps?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what an assumption we make that, I mean, I think if we walked around saying, this may be the last day I ever live, you'd be a wreck. But I do think you have to be aware at the same time, it could be. And to count on you have no guarantee you will ever arrive, quite a mistake.
Because also, as the story started, there was an accident. And I mean, nothing is guaranteed to anyone. So once you really think about it, if nothing is guaranteed, do you go running and saying, I am on limited time now, I'm going to go scavenge everything to be able to appease myself? And now, look, I have seen people do that, They will lose their business or they will lose their job, and they will go out and, boy, honey, get out of their way, because they are like terrors on a thread. They're going to get whatever they want. That whole thing, hell be damned kind of idea, Yeah. They're going to get what they want. You also see it, too, when it breaks up with relationships. You say, well, this was lacking, and then they go out and they find someone who can provide that in exponential amounts. And then they didn't realize that all the other things that didn't come along with it, which is what you were seeking, is what you found. Maybe?
Yeah, I think that is true. And I think, again, that's that outside validation thing. If you think what's going to make you happy is someone else providing you with anything, whether it's friendship or love or emotional support or material things, you're almost destined not to find it, because you can't count on somebody else as much as you might want to and believe at the beginning of a relationship, oh, this is going to be it. They bring this. They complete me, like we were saying before. If you take that route, you're putting all your happiness in somebody else's hand. And that's a recipe for disaster.
Right, yeah. I think it's so vitally important. I just saw a social media post, and it says about nothing. Let's say, it says, stay silent. Everything does not need to be said. And I went,
yes, I agree. And I like that, too, because in the book, again, not to really reveal too much about the book, but in the book, I wanted to leave some things unsaid, because leaving something unsaid can sometimes leave open a pathway to a better understanding. I mean, for one thing, what you think you understand, once it's expressed, is there between the two of you. And if you leave a little space, have a little patience, there can be a better understanding that doesn't come necessarily from words.
Right. Do you think perhaps, Diane, also, too, the things that you say, oh, well, I need to say this, it's almost because you have to one-up the conversation, or you have to justify who you are or why you did it, or you have to spew revenge, regret, and judgment on another. I think we see that a lot. It's sort of like, well, you never gave it to me so that's why I went out and found it. Excuse me? Or, those kinds of ideas. Or like, this was never right here in the first place. You never brought it into the marriage or the relationship or whatever it is. And we're going, well, holy crap. I mean, you want me to do 10,000 things, but now you added 10,001 for me to be, So I think the idea is that what is perfection, what is something better, or what is what I have? Those are three different things, and I think people try to intermesh them, and it's not going to work. Do you think?
Well, perfection, first of all, perfection does not exist. That's an impossibility. And we're fooling ourselves if we think we can ever achieve that. So I think, I'm a perfectionist by nature, so it's been a really, really tough struggle for me to finally figure out perfection doesn't exist. That's a fantasy. So kick that one out. The something better, I think it is possible for many situations to move into something better. And I also think there are times when you realize what you have, what you've been given, what seems maybe disappointing or lacking in some way may be the best that's possible. I'm thinking about people's health right now. I have a couple of friends who are going through some bad health challenges, and it's terrible what they're facing. I hope the treatments work, and I hope they come out on the other side of this so much better. But I'm aware, and they may be aware, that this moment they have right now, where they're sick,
right.
And that may be the better than. And so to try to appreciate what's happening in this moment is a challenge, but really important, I think.
That's so vitally important to remember. So many times my next upcoming work is going to be speaking to that directly. And I think about it, the idea is that can we consciously live today? Because many times, over the decades, patients will come to me, chronic illness, cancer, here's my money, fix me, I've got to get back to my life, bring me back to where I used to be or whatever. And I said, what are you seeking? And that would be their answer. And I'd say, no, you are seeking something else. You're seeking peace. You're seeking compassion. You're seeking love. You're running from fear. You're running from the pain. You're running from the suffering. So sit in everything today and see how it feels. And just say, if I have breath tomorrow, that's all that matters. That's it. And just as your characters, it could be taken away in a breath, no matter what.
Yes.
And I think we forget that. We say, but that's not true. That's only for other people. So it doesn't matter the decade or who you are or where you are. If you think that anything is more than just the breath of this moment, good luck with the story. And I think that's where they get stuck in the story, maybe. Do you think?
I think that's exactly right. I think that is exactly right. It's so easy to forget that. And I guess, to a certain extent, being human means forgetting over again that, yes, this is all going to end, and it could all end tomorrow. Because if we focused on that exclusively to the exclusion of everything else, we would go completely out of our minds. But at the same time, we have to be very aware that it's true, and that you can't be imagining perfection because it doesn't exist. You can't be running from your challenges and imagining a world where everything is all sunshine and roses. Or you miss your life. Your life passes by, and you realize, wait, I didn't actually live it. I didn't actually live in those days.
Yeah, I have this list of words that we always talk about on the show, kick to the curb. And kick to the curb is the word forever. I'm with you forever. I'm doing this forever. When you hear the word forever, you go, slam the door shut. Because I always think of it. The idea is that if you can live every day, that you have patients are really ill. They say, but I have the right to live. I said, but you also have the right to die. You also have the right to be able to let yourself just say, you know what, I've lived a great life and I'm finished. And so many people are not allowing themselves the right to be able to exit. You're not allowing it in health, and you certainly are not allowing it in relationships. I have the right to let this relationship die. I do not need to keep it alive. So if we think about the word life and death, can we see that beginnings and endings, life and death, occur on a daily basis? Are we willing to be able to see that?
Absolutely. I think it's a challenge. But I think about it in terms of grief as well. We have to suffer a million small deaths of many things that we had big hopes for, whether it's a job opportunity or a friendship relationship or a prize, an object, a vacation. There's so many things that we think we deserve and that we think we want that we don't get. So we suffer the death of our dreams in some ways, and we have to mourn those things, grieve those things, and then move on from that. But I think, to your point about understanding that there is a time for things to end, I think it's okay for us to say, I wanted that. I'm sad that's gone. I'm going to allow myself to feel the sadness, that's gone, but I'm not going to allow it to completely devastate me. I'm not going to allow it to ruin everything that comes after. I'm going to give myself the time to sit and mourn, and then give myself the opportunity to move forward with some different dream, some other opportunity, another path.
When we use the words grief and suffering, who is grieving and who is suffering? And what are they grieving and suffering? They're grieving and suffering a loss of a story that they believe they deserve, just as you shared. Is anyone ever guaranteed that? I think I've learned that, working so much with children with severe illnesses, that they only have today. And their families are just exuberant at expressing their love for them and that life every day. And sure, they have a loss afterwards, but it doesn't drag on for eons like many people do.
Is that because they've been helped to see that and guided to appreciate it in that way? Or do you think that's maybe a natural response when you're watching a child be ill like that?
What they did is they didn't create a story. They lived in the moment. And I think if you don't create the story and you live in the moment, then you can appreciate how life unfolds instead of saying, this is how I want life to be. Two different stories.
Yes, I think that is absolutely right. It's quite brilliant to word it that way. The difference between the story that I'm making up that I wish were true, the anti-reality story, and the reality story, or which is not a story, I guess. Or is it a story? Is reality a story? There's a question.
Right. But don't you think, too, that you share about your characters, when they did that, they may have also come to that realization, is this a story or is this reality? But then they fully didn't go any further and own it to make a change? Well,
one did. Some of them did, I would say. And others did not. I think what others were hoping is that it might be a kind of change that wouldn't be what everyone would hope for. It might be a quieter, slower kind of change, and maybe that was okay with that character. I was going to say, because they all changed in ways, some in big ways and some in smaller ways, but they all did change over the course of the book because of the decisions they made and the circumstances, like the accident that, they had no say in.
I think also, too, Diane, in closing, we say is sometimes people will venture out. They will enjoy something differently and say, I would love that. But then they come back, and then they're stuck with regrets. Well, I came back because I have this, I had to that, where I kind of did my list of pros and cons, so to speak, and they're still always unhappy. So then the question ventures out. I think there's a question to maybe explore for others is to say, what is my happiness dependent upon?
Right.
Is it dependent upon someone else, a scenario, what I should be receiving or what I deserve? Or is it that my heart is just able to delight in the moment? And delight means I'm breathing and I'm standing still. It doesn't mean that I'm happy and I have a joyous face and everything is great. I have money in the bank and my kids are doing good and nothing ever happens to me. That is not delight in the moment. That is an illusion in the moment. So I think, and we say, can we just breathe in the moment, regardless of our situation, and say, this is where I'm settled and I'm home?
I think that's the goal. That should be the goal. 100% agree. And you use the word delight, which I love. That's a beautiful word, a very apt word. I've also heard people use the word joy in that context as distinguished from happiness. That it's the appreciation of the moment and all that the moment offers. And if you can achieve the ability to do that, that's really what living in the moment means. It means appreciating what's beautiful about this moment, which only lasts a moment.
Right. You know, I think, and you could do that in the face of death. You could do it in the face of chronic illness. You could do it in the face of aging or accident or grief or suffering or anything that you want to say. You really just have to close your eyes and just take that Zen moment, don't you think?
I do, and it's a decision. You know, it's a decision over which we have control. We like to think we don't, but we do.
Well, Diane, it was such a pleasure to have you with us here today. What I really thought that the story is good about for the summer read is that it takes us on an adventure. It kind of inspires us to say, ooh, what if? And it will just say, maybe I've done those things before, and isn't it cool? And you want to see where your character's going next. But also, too, at the end of the story, it doesn't hit you over the head with grief or pain or ending or this umpteen joy that you can't attain anyway. It kind of takes you on the middle lane, don't you think?
I think it does, and I very much intended to leave the story so that readers could decide for themselves and think about what is something better here, and did they achieve it?
Yeah, because sometimes we want to say, oh, but I want to do it that way. Here's the book. Go do it. And it's not going to work out, right?
Not really, no.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Diane, it was such a pleasure to have you with us. Can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work?
Oh, yes, thank you. I have a very simple website to remember. It's DianeParrish.com. And on the website are links to my writing outside the book, my monthly newsletter, a column I write about books for booktrip.com, and there's a link to buy the book as well.
Very good. Well, Diane, it was a pleasure to have you with us here this time for the Summer 2025 read. We thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. What a wonderful conversation.
Oh, I was so delighted to have you. Thank you. If you'd like to find out more information about Diane Parrish, again, the book is Something Better, a Novel. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to her website for more information. And it is about being able to say, I just need something to uplift my spirit, to be able to open the door, maybe to guide my thoughts, perhaps to trigger me, or maybe to say, I just want to go on a fun ride. And isn't that the point of a novel? Go on a fun ride and say, oh, that was great for a day. I'm over it. I'm good to go. My regular life will show up right as it does at 8 o'clock in the morning when your alarm goes off. It's always guaranteed. Maybe, maybe not. Check out the story. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit drjeanettegallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.